All right. Well, let us all get to know you a little bit, Matt. What was your favorite game growing up, and what's your favorite game now?
Oh, good question. I think growing up, well, at first it was probably Super Mario Brothers 3. That game kind of hooked me for a while. And then I got pretty big into Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat. I used to play with my brother a lot, and we were semi-competitive, just always trying to be better than each other in those kind of games.
Yeah, that's well, Mortal Kombat was my favorite game growing up because
Oh,
me and my
nice.
uncle that and oh man, I've already forgotten the name of it.
Tekken was a big one
No,
we played a lot too.
Soul Calibur,
Oh yeah, that
the
was
Soul
good.
Calibur series.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
we used to have tournaments on that constantly back in the day.
that's
Um,
awesome. That's a good one too. I love
yeah.
that.
And if you had to pick one currently, what would you say is your favorite game now?
Well, right now it's Dark and Darker. That's about all I play right now.
That's
A little,
fair.
maybe a
I,
little Rust, but I don't think it's my favorite anymore.
I played a little bit of the beta of Dark and Darker. I haven't gotten too far into it. I haven't played it all since full release of the game.
It's
I've
D
been
and D
curious
Tarkov.
of it.
It is. It
Yeah,
is.
yeah. That's why I was curious just from the similarities, and I seen Lumpeg play it and all that. So
Gotcha. It's a fun game, fun little game.
What was your inspiration to get you into game development, coding, and apparently engine design and development? What started you down that path?
Yeah, that's a good question too. I kind of always had a bit of a. I always just loved games since I was a kid, and it was sort of what I always wanted to do without realizing it. But at some point, it clicked because I was doing IT and doing contract stuff, and helping people with various computer problems for so many years of my life. And I got really burnt out on that. And at one point, I just said, I am going to do what I always wanted to do as a kid, and I'm going to start making games. And enrolled in school for computer science and focused on that for about 4 years, really hard, learned a ton, started making my own little games and engines and tools all the time on the side, which got me a ton more extra experience in addition to school.
So yeah, you've actually made an engine to develop a game inside of. What kind of process does that entail? Like, is that years of work, or is it something you were able to put together relatively quickly, or just a
Hmm.
little? Because you said you were still in school at the time, right? So just
Yeah, I
curious.
was I was in school when I started making it. I got really interested in graphics and how graphics work and how game engines work. And I was trying to use Unreal and Unity and a little bit of Godot back then when I first started, and I didn't like that I didn't know what was going on, so I just decided to make my own and from scratch. Just start a new project and start putting everything together, kind of thing. It's a lot of work. If you know what you're doing, you can kind of get the structure going relatively quickly. But if you don't know what you're doing, yeah, it takes additional time just to figure all that out.
do you think that it's becoming easier to work inside of certain engines such as Unreal Engine and stuff with the newer technologies?
Yes and no. Well, that's an interesting question. It has in ways because you can just go look up a tutorial and follow along and kind of get a little thing going. But
Right.
after that, what do you do? It's always like, do you know how to continue after the tutorial? That's where most people get stuck if they don't really know it. So it always comes back to understanding how to add features.
Right.
And that can be really difficult. It can be just as challenging in an engine as it can doing it from scratch because it almost is the same because you still got to think about things and wrap your head around a problem to design the proper solution for whatever it is. Like right
Right.
now in the game I'm developing, I've been working on an inventory system, and it's always questioning, is this going to work here? How do I make it pop up and how do I make it close? Just so many little tiny things, like even just moving the cursor up and down requires programming more logic in. And most of that stuff is they have like a built-in version on Unreal, but it's
Right.
very obvious. Like if you ship with their built-in version of menus, it's very
Yeah.
obvious. It's like, oh, this is
Everyone
the
knows it.
stock Unreal stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. You hear that
So
all the time. Oh, this is copy paste from the Unreal Store.
yes. So it's kind of easy to do that, but you'll notice with those things they never really get finished. It's always like, hey, I got
Right.
this far and then I gave up.
You're right.
So it's
Or
still
they'll
relatively difficult.
I know you see a lot of like halfway built games that will pop up on Steam, and you know what I mean. Like they'll try to sell it for 5, 10 bucks, and then you never really see a finished product.
Yep. Yeah, I've seen those a lot too.
Yeah, unfortunately, it does happen. Or too often.
Now, do you think that's just because of how you can just buy assets and basically, like you said, there's like a pretty much a starter version of Unreal for a lot of people to just mess with and then never really actually like take the time to learn and you know actually study the whole thing like you have?
I think that's a big part of it. Yeah. 'Cause people dive in and have a new idea and they just want to get something up, but it's it's called technical debt. Basically, once it gets bigger, it requires even more work to add and manage. The bigger your code base gets and the bigger the game gets, it just takes more and more work to upkeep and fix and add things. So most people, especially solo developers, once they get so far, they're just like, I can't do it anymore. I don't have time, or I'm not that
Right.
interested anymore. But shipping the initial idea is often pretty quick, but it's just like a incomplete demo usually. So it's not very fun for the end user for very long.
Right. When it comes to anti-cheat, is there any certain anti-cheats you have more experience with than others? Like any well-known ones?
Well, just from seeing them, like there's Battle Eye and there's the Riot Games one, Vanguard.
Right.
Vanguard, that's what it is, yeah.
I kind of know how they work. I don't
Well,
really.
that's what I was gonna say. If you could just like give us a brief like rundown of say Battle Eye and like what exactly they do for like a studio that hires them or that uses them for their game anti-cheat.
Sure. Well, it varies a little bit. I know that Riot Vanguard. I'm going to drop a few technical terms on you, so I'll try to define them a little bit, or maybe I'll just ask. But
We can also just go, hey, middle, technical terms, can you put on screen?
oh, okay,
100%.
Yeah, he can always
Awesome.
look them up.
Beautiful, yeah.
Well, there's a kernel level anti-cheat, which is what the Vanguard is. Typically, you can
Right.
tell when something's kernel level because it'll say you have to restart your computer. And what that means typically is that it has the same power level as your operating system, as Windows. Like Windows does all sorts of stuff in the background you have no control over,
Right.
including, how a lot of things work and how it prioritizes what tasks to run and things like that. That's all hidden to the user. A kernel level anti-cheat is also hidden to the user and runs at the same power level, has full access to everything on your computer, the memory, your hard drives. And
Essentially,
that's
it gets admin permission and just starts acting.
it's beyond admin. It's
Yeah.
it's what's called kernel level. It just has like full 100%
Above all
power.
access, yeah.
Yeah.
That's why people always complain, oh, that's an intrusive anti-cheat. Anytime
Yes.
it's yeah.
Yeah, they're afraid they're
But
going to
it's-
get their private stuff revealed or something, which is a valid concern.
I mean,
Right.
kernel level's also probably one of the best ways to go about an anti-cheat, I assume.
It's basically the only way,
I was
unfortunately.
gonna say it seems to be the most successful as far as deterring cheaters and actually being able to combat.
Yeah. The problem with detecting cheaters, for the most part, from what I understand, I'm not a big anti-cheat guy, but I've researched it and studied how they work and that sort of thing. And well, there's a couple ways of detecting. One way you can detect for players' mouse and keyboard inputs if they have a repetition that's perfect, like you always click in exactly 0.2 milliseconds or something, and it never varies. That's always a
Right.
sign of a cheat. So some games will kind of scan for input and be like, oh, these are all too similar, and there's a pattern. They must be using
Right.
program.
Any repetition that seems off.
Yes.
Well, I know, like, back in the day for World of Warcraft, for them to catch cheaters, they would put a rock in front of common routes, and if, the character did not go around and the inputs didn't change, it was
Yep.
an obvious cheater. They were running some kind of macro or...
Yeah. The popular app to use for that is of just a public free app called AutoHotkey.
Huh.
So with AutoHotkey, it basically allows you to set up and time inputs. So you can basically set up a big script to do things at a certain time, and people will use that for like recoil control. They'll
Right.
click a button and it'll auto pull down their mouse as specified. And if it's not right, they go change it a little bit, and then people
And that's
share
just-
these scripts.
Free software, huh?
Yeah, it's all.
Yeah,
Auto
especially
hockey
for
is free.
games that have like an actual like recoil pattern that's the same every time. Such as like, I
Yeah.
think CS:GO is that way. I think
Yeah. So a lot of developers are starting to randomize their patterns a little bit, so that's not so easy, which is good.
That's good, yeah.
But there's really no way to detect that other than to scan for how they're pulling down their mouse. And if it's the exact same all the time, then they're using a script, because you can't do that perfectly as a human.
Right.
And not all, that's kind of a hard thing to develop, though. You basically got to record all these inputs all the time. And it's just like a whole nother thing you got to throw in your game that actually takes a bit of processing power.
But see, that's a thing I don't think people understand. They
Right.
seem to think it should be easy. Like, oh, this guy's flying. Like, you should be able to just ban him. It's like, it, can you kind of explain why like it's not as simple as just monitoring every single player 24/7?
Yeah. Well, that's one of the reasons there is just that scanning and comparing inputs, and then designing another application to monitor the inputs. It's just a ton of work, and it's kind of hard to implement, I would say. Another reason is, well, yeah, I guess I just can't watch everybody. There's just too many.
Right.
But
It would also probably hurt the performance of just the game altogether.
somewhat. I know there are some built-in anti-cheats that say, hey, if you're in a weird place in the level, just we assume you're cheating and you're going to get kicked from the match or whatever.
Right.
But games don't always do that. Like, I always thought they would do that with like games where people just fly around, and like, can't you just detect that I'm way in the air?
Right.
Or that they're way in the air?
Right.
But I don't know why they don't do that. That seems like one of the easier ones, because you can literally just look at their world position and be like, whoa, that's way off.
Well, with Tarkov, they manually review each individual report. So one, the person has to be reported, and two, when will they finally get to that footage? Would it cause major issues gameplay wise or performance wise or anything like that to implement something like an AI script to do the reviewing process for them, or is it just out of the engine's capability?
It's hard to say. I guess it depends. They probably have to really think about what the problem is, and some are going to be easier than others. The world position one, I would think, would be the easiest, because it's just a couple.
They're either where
It's
they
like,
should be on the plane or they're not, right?
yeah, it's like 3 floats they would read and be like, is this off or on? But still not always easy, because levels, you go up and down and you climb and stuff.
Now,
Do
But
you think
that's
there's
go ahead.
no. So
No, go ahead.
I guess almost changing topic, but I don't want to. I just want to say we're only at the tip of the iceberg here. There's a lot more.
Well,
There's
do you want a few minutes to just start riffing from the top and work your way down a little bit?
I guess I just wanted to say that there are a lot of forms of cheats. The auto hotkeys one. The flying is a whole nother thing. That's not a script.
right?
That's typically another very popular method of cheating, is to launch the program as a injection, or inject another process into the program, which
It's actually
basically,
one of my questions. Yeah.
and that typically means you're making a program that basically runs and reads the memory of the other one. That's a very short, simple version of it. But basically, you're allowed to see entirely what the game is doing in your computer's RAM when you do something like that. And you can actually go in and change values often with stuff like that. So they can say, hey, put me wherever here. Oh, here, this value where I have 30 ammo, let's make it 10 million or something like that.
Yeah,
And
just absurd numbers.
yeah, they can literally just look at the RAM and change things. And that's a very popular form of cheating too.
Right,
So
because
where
that gives
do
access to unlimited amounts
Yeah.
of different things you can do.
Kernel level anti-cheats are really good at catching those. So that's often why games go to kernel level, is they're like, well, there's nothing we can do about people just reading the memory and changing stuff. So what do we do?
Do you think there's a legitimate fear for going kernel level with for that becoming the norm? Should there actually be a reason people are afraid for that to be normalized?
for every game to run kernel level engines or
Hmm.
anti cheats?
I have sort of mixed opinions on this. If every game does it, you're going to have like a bunch of them running on your computer, and it's just going to
True.
be,
That's
who knows what's
very
going on.
taxing, and yeah.
Yeah, and
A
it's
lot
like,
of
who
back
do you
doors open
trust
up right there.
to
Yeah,
give that access to your computer? You know what I mean?
right. Because currently it's just Microsoft probably is the one who has it, but they have so much going on that they're not really
Yeah.
going to care what people do.
Right.
But yeah, I guess if there was a common one that everyone trusted, it could work out. I personally don't like having any kernel level stuff on like my work computer or my like personal computer. If I have a gaming computer that's literally just for games, I'm okay with having stuff on there. But if I'm like working on documents and
Right.
type in social security numbers and stuff. I do
Personal
not like
thing.
to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do not like to have kernel level anti cheat just because my knowledge of it can see it. Technically, they could see and do everything on your computer they want. And
Yeah. You're pretty much giving them, your whole computer. You're trusting them to just do what they're supposed to do and not
yeah,
do anything, nefarious.
that's right. And if they do, it's out of your control.
Yeah. You won't even know.
They could
Right.
pump
That's
extra voltage to your CPU and just burn up your motherboard if they wanted.
Right. Because hasn't that been used in the past? Not necessarily for anti cheats, but people to get kernel level access and then destroy people's hardware, like doing stuff like that.
Yeah,
I know I've heard stories of that.
that happens. Prolific hackers will do that. They'll social engineer you into installing a thing, and then you reboot, and your computer's taken over. And
Right. And then
who knows at what level? It could be at a
right.
kernel level.
Yeah. Yeah.
they'll do like a ransom, like you won't get your computer back unless you send us $10,000.
Yep. And you never get your computer back. You send them
Right.
$10,000, they disappear. You don't get your computer back.
Yeah.
Just for clarity, and anyone
Yeah.
wondering
Yeah,
how do I
you're
get my stuff back?
$10,000 down,
Never
and
paid
you
a
still don't
ransom.
get your computer.
Yeah.
The best thing you can do is shut off your computer, have a professional pull your hard drive and get your data.
Yep.
Your OS you need a new OS. It's done.
Yeah. Get rid of that whole hard drive. That
Yeah.
whole
Yeah. Another popular form of cheating is I would call it color scanning. Basically, you make some sort of application that just looks at your screen and looks for certain colors or patterns and can do stuff like that. It's really good for mini maps. To say like, hey, you got a mini map in the bottom right corner. Let's design a program that looks at the mini map, and when we see a little, I don't know, whatever it may be, do a certain thing. So there's those kind of programs too that run as like an overlay and can kind of point out things based on what they're programmed to look for, which is often just certain shapes and colors.
Right.
So there's those kind too. Those are basically impossible to detect. There's like, except with kernel level stuff, if they know exactly what they're looking for. But
and
since
is
they
that
run,
because it's running outside of the game and
yep,
it's okay.
it's just scanning your screen, which
Right.
is not an illegal thing to just say, hey, the pixels on my screen, let's read them into a big array and then process that. That's very common for like self-driving type stuff. Actually, they look at the edge lines and things like that.
Yeah.
I've seen monitors, the newer monitors that are coming out with AI built in that are supposed to be able to basically do that just from the monitor, where
Yeah.
they can lock onto certain colors or shapes or movements, and it's all done, just within the monitor software. So there's nothing on your PC,
Hmm.
and that's kind of scary that that's
It's
becoming.
an MSI monitor. MSI's the one
Yeah,
doing it.
I seen an MSI one, and I believe there was an LG one that was also doing it.
Gaming intelligence. To
Yeah,
improve the
so
user's experience, MSI designed a series of smart software based on years of professional experience in research and development of esports and an understanding of needs of players. Through smart gaming technologies provided by MSI, including sound tune, optic score, players can have a better gaming experience. Yeah,
Huh.
so it has smart crosshairs.
Oh, that's kind of cool, I guess. I haven't really looked into that AI monitors yet,
Yeah,
so
it's interesting.
yeah, it's kind of crazy.
Kind of scary.
But do you think that there's any real way that that cheating will become harder anytime in the near future? Like, do you think there's really any expectation that something could change?
Yeah, is there a future where anti cheats are able to detect and capture and deal with within a matter of minutes or even hours?
hmm. Well, it has traditionally been a game of cat and mouse.
Yeah, absolutely.
They design a solution and they just get better at making cheats or do it a different way. So it's kind of like computer viruses in a way. It's going to get harder, sure, as they keep working on it, trying to solve them or figure out the different methods that cheaters use. But is it ever going to go away completely? I don't think so. Unfortunately, there's just not really anything you can do.
As long as there's a need or want for people to be number one or have the best items or
Yeah,
perform better
there's
than they're intended to, there will be a need for cheats.
yep.
Well, kind of rephrasing that, do you think there's a chance that anti-cheat um might become more sophisticated faster than the cheats do, and that maybe it might not completely like get rid of it, but it might start to like be
Dwindle
in
it down a
the
bit.
yeah, it might be in the lead and ahead of them a little more than it is now.
I don't think it'll ever be totally in the lead, unfortunately. The problem is, hold on, let me think about this for a minute. Well, I guess the problem is there's just no perfect way of detecting all of them. Ultimately, you'd almost have to have like a it's just like a computer built for not being toyed with, basically, kind of like a console or something.
Right.
It's like that's easy because people typically can't toy with consoles too easily, although they still can.
Yeah, and
Right.
then you have
They
items like
eventually
the Zen come out, and
Yeah,
yeah, they eventually do. Like at
yeah,
first, it's good for a couple months, but
but the way
once people get a
PCs
hold of it,
are, people build their own PCs.
yeah, it's
right.
so open source that
Yeah,
you just locking them
But
down is not a way. It's not ever going to happen.
yeah,
Now
I
the
don't.
kernel thing is interesting as far as like I could see that being a way that there could be some headroom made as far as uh being able to stop a lot of the stuff that we have problems with, but people agreeing with that, I just don't see that ever happening. Um, but like do you think that there's a middle ground, like a better anti-cheat that's not completely like complete kernel access, like maybe like I don't know, a lower stage of access?
There are some that try. I haven't heard any of them being that successful. I know, like League of Legends, for example, is trying really hard to crack down on cheaters, and they still get them at the highest level.
yeah,
Um, Even with Riot Vanguard, there doesn't seem to be a whole lot you can do to totally stop it. People just keep getting more creative, and computers are well-known science. It might be a little complicated and a lot of little math, but it's all actually pretty easy. It's mostly just zeros and ones and manipulation of that at the bottom level. So people are always going to be able to understand what's going on one way or another, no matter how much you try to hide it, unless you like fully hide it and say you don't have access. And that's just not possible with the way
Right.
PCs are. There's,
But yeah,
yeah,
it's kind of impossible as long as you're gonna give access, then there's gonna be cheats made. Like there's kind of
yeah.
no way around that.
yeah,
Um,
unfortunately. I always think well, I don't know of any perfect solution, but I always like the idea of reputation. Kind of like, I don't know, you just get well-known players that don't cheat, and they make for good fun. But you always end up getting new guys or someone you've never heard of that's really good, and you're like, oh, this guy's really good. Is he
Well,
cheating or is he real?
right.
right.
Yeah, it's always
Well, then you also have the people that are really blatant with the cheats too, that are the cheat resellers and things like that. I think that's
yeah,
another big part of the problem. The griefers and the resellers are
Well, you
yeah,
look at Call of Duty, like that they developed. I think it was Ricochet was the name of their anti-cheat.
yeah, Ricochet.
It's like they were having such a big problem in Warzone, and they have pretty much infinite money to spend, and they still could not really get a hold. I don't know how it is now because I haven't played it in a long time, but I'm pretty sure there's still cheaters, in Warzone.
I think this. I don't know if this is 100% accurate, but I think this goes along with a computer science problem that is still unsolved and will never be solved. It's called the halting problem. If you look up the halting problem, and
Hmm.
you'll see kind of what I mean. This might be a bad analogy actually, but I think it's related. The halting problem basically says you could not make another program that tells when another program should be doing a certain thing, something like that, and it's an unsolved problem.
Which that makes sense because you're the program that's supposed to be monitoring the other program is always going to need a program to monitor it. So
Yeah, it can
it's
never.
just infinite. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, you can never fully determine.
Which yeah.
Yeah, it's. I think it goes along with the halting problem. I was just thinking of that last night. I don't know if it's a good comparison, but I might look into that a little bit more later. But that's what it reminded me of. It's like you can never solve cheating, and it's like the same case as the halting problem, which is an unsolved problem in
Um,
computer science. Yeah.
this is kind of off the subject of anti-cheat, but back to just like development and just engines and stuff. Do you like the scope of certain games? Is it easy to look at a game and know like how much time and effort they've put into it? Can you just tell from knowing, how to do it yourself? Like you can tell how much they've put into it.
Yeah, it definitely makes a difference. I can definitely see things that I didn't notice when I was a kid, for example, like once I started getting deep into computer science and programming and learning how to make my own things from the ground up, I started looking at things and be like, oh, I know how they did that. Or I'll
Right.
see something and be like, oh, that looks really complicated. I can't even imagine how they did that. That looks like a lot of work. There's definitely stuff like that.
I always just think about that because I think of Tarkov and like Daisy, like bigger games, and people, expect updates like they get in like a Call of Duty multiplayer, and it's like I think people don't really grasp the difference in sizes in a lot of games. They just look at it as a game,
Hmm.
so
Right.
they just expect things to
They
be worked on.
compare map size
Yeah,
to map size, not volume.
yeah, not what's actually in the whole,
Right.
in the
Tarkov
code itself.
has so many levels of things being added and generated at any time.
It sounds like they have a lot of technical debt at this point with Tarkov. It's a
Yeah,
big game.
yeah,
There's a
they're
lot
very
going on.
invested.
Yeah, changing one thing could break other things.
Right.
It just becomes a mess at some
There's
Right.
a
point.
lot of
A
it's
lot of
like a
players
bunch of
don't
games into
understand that
one.
either.
No, they don't.
Yeah, that just seems to be like one of the major complaints like we always hear about, especially with Tarkov and other games is like it just seems people have they don't have the ability to separate, like hey, just because it's a game doesn't mean it's the exact same as your favorite game or, the game you played last year. Like games are different depending on
Hmm.
the size, it's like it's not as easy to like you said, you change one thing, it could completely break the game if it's, years and years of code just stacked on top of each other.
I can't
Yeah,
hear rain in raid right now, and I'm sure for a while they had no idea why. I expect it's going to be fixed tomorrow in the patch and all those things. But that's the other thing too. Players have a hard time doing is waiting for the patches and waiting on things to happen. They fail to realize how far ahead the studio is probably working on something. What like they're on a
yeah,
completely, well, not completely different engine, but they're on an updated version of the engine. They're working on more current patches to 1.0 full release, and people are expecting things to happen very quickly. Um, but then fail to realize that every detail they change to fix something could very potentially break multiple more things or cause
yep,
this to go wrong and this to go wrong. Like currently being in a raid, not being able to hear rain is probably some never intended happening from fixing, even something with vaulting, or it
Yeah,
could be
something
anything
completely
essentially.
unrelated.
yeah.
Yeah.
It could be. It's hard to say. Usually with that stuff, it's just like there's like one little piece of logic that got missed, or like an if statement got messed up or something. At least that's usually what it is in my experience.
Right.
What kind of process is it to find that problem and then enter the
It
solution?
it depends on how organized the code base is, and in my experience, like I guess I can speak from a little bit of a example. I was working at, I don't want to drop any names, but I was working at a research company and I was working on a math library. It was all C. It was basically a math library they used for other parts of their company. But my job was basically to improve the library and add some new features. And there was this bug I kept having where like it would basically not compile on any Mac OS for some reason, but it would work fine on Windows and Linux. And it was like, it was a problem I never solved. And we basically just had to revert the feature back because we couldn't figure out why it wouldn't compile on Mac OS. It made no sense. I had so many people look at it, spend days and days scanning through every line of code, and everyone was like, "We don't know why. Let's just
Yeah, that's
revert
kind of
back."
That's
crazy.
insane. That's
Yeah,
insane.
that's
Yeah,
crazy.
It
that
felt
is
insane
crazy.
to me. I thought I was losing my mind. I was like, I've been on this same bug for 2 weeks. I don't know what to do anymore. Asked everyone in the building for help, and no one knows how to solve it. It was crazy. So that stuff like that does happen. And ultimately, I'm sure there was like one little thing, like maybe a wrong variable type somewhere or something that the
Well,
Mac
it could
OS
be as
didn't like
simple
for some
as
reason.
a symbol being used too,
I
right?
will
Like,
say the
Sure.
meme is always a plus or a minus getting,
yeah,
vice
Yeah.
versa, it's like supposed to be a plus and was a minus, and then they just go in and change it and then everything's fixed.
Yeah, it could be that. But it's a different compiler with different operating systems too. So
right.
the compiler might be doing something a little different that somehow does not work on. Yeah, there's a lot of little things to think about. I guess with most games these days, they only compile it on Windows. with like MSVC compiler, just the
Um,
Microsoft standard one.
when it comes to like well-known engines such as Unity and Unreal and stuff, what ones did you find it easier to work in? Because
Good
I just
question.
your Unity is really hard. Like I don't know personally, but
People always say Unity's easier. In my experience, well, I did not like game engines at first. I found them all overcomplicated, and there was just too many things I was not interested in constantly being thrown at me. I didn't find any of them to be easy to learn. I've been working in Unreal for about 2 years now straight for a company, and I still feel like a total noob using it, but now I understand.
right,
Now So most of the time, I guess the previous problem I had when learning engines is I always felt like things were kind of pre-done or pre-ready, and that's not really the case as much as you think. Like if you want a certain feature to work a certain way, you basically still have to build it from scratch in the engine. It's rarely pre-made, which is why it's still hard to make games even with an engine.
Right.
It's not even necessarily more difficult. Just if you know how to like code in C++ really well, for example, it's almost just as easy to write your own engine as to pick up another one. It's just going to take a long time. And Unreal has done a really great job with all the graphic stuff. That's what I love about it. I don't want to have to program all that. That was a nightmare.
right with
But
like Lumen and all that stuff.
yeah, that's amazing stuff. It looks
Yeah.
great. Like
Yeah,
I wrote a
Really
lot of
does.
shaders for my engine, and it was very tedious, and it was a lot to get shadows and colors and all the different types of lights working correctly, and it's never going to look as good as Lumen and all that. So,
right.
or maybe it will, because yeah, another thing people don't know about Unreal is it's not open source, but it's open source available, which means anybody can go look at all the code behind Unreal Engine. It's
Huh.
But you're not allowed to use it as your own.
Right.
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 But you
But you
can,
can take the
yeah.
inspiration from it. I know you can't talk about the game you're working on. Are there any projects that you are able to talk about? Or is there anything that you're like proud that you made that you can
Uh,
tell us about? Is there anything you can
I've got a lot of little things. I don't know if it's going to be anything that impressive.
You've made games, dude. That's to at least
Yeah, that's
us for
impressive
sure.
enough
It's
right there.
impressive on its own.
I don't have any released. I have an Android program or an Android app that's released, but it's not a game. It's just like a helper tool.
That's cool.
That was made in all Java though. It's Most of the games I have are little samples or little things I made with my engine. I guess the best place to see them is probably on my GitHub. I think most of them I have on there.
Your GitHub.
Yeah, github.com/Matt Early. It's one word. I can link it.
Yeah,
That kind
any of
of,
your links that you want us to have too for the video, send to Middle. That way he just has them. You know what I mean?
okay.
You can just message him directly if you don't
But yeah,
mind.
I guess if you look at my GitHub, you can see the years of history and just various projects. But that's only the
Yeah.
public ones. There's a gazillion private ones too.
Right. Right. Oh, your
My
engine's on here too. Is this
Yeah, it
is
is.
is this your engine?
Yeah, the Archer engine. Yeah, that's mine.
Dude, nice. By the way, congratulations on all this. This is really impressive stuff.
Oh,
Even things you think aren't are. So,
Yeah, to us, we're
it's
kind of like
it's
in
really
awe about
cool.
it.
Yeah, this is
all
really
right, cool.
awesome.
I appreciate that. That's cool.
What would you say is your most rewarding project that you've done that you can talk about?
Good question. I guess it would be that Archer engine. Would probably be the big one. I've got a lot of little sub things, but they're not done and never been shown. So, I mean, that'll change one day, I'm sure. But that Archer engine is probably the biggest one. I have another one I was pretty proud of for a while. It was like the first big program I wrote called D-Empower. It's like a Dungeons and Dragons dungeon master helper command line thing. I use it all the time when I DM now. And it's
Yeah, I
up on
see.
there. It's
I
called
see D Empower 2.
D-Empower 2. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
If you check
Okay.
that out.
Nice. Yeah.
That was like the first big project I made when I was still in school. And it's just got so much little D&D tools. It was just something I was doing for fun, but it ended up
Yeah.
being really useful, and I still use it to this day.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Is there anything you really wanted to make and you just are still working on it? Like, is there anything in the future that you think is something you're gonna have your hands in?
I think so. Yeah, that's a good question. Thank you for the question. I've been toying with this game idea for a while, and I really want to make it, but a very difficult game to make. So I don't know if it'll ever come out, but it would be along the lines of, you guys ever played Rust?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Imagine Rust with the server that wipes eventually, just the same
Okay.
way, except when it comes to wipe time, the players either have to like win or lose the world. Yeah, either come together or keep fighting each other and probably lose. And the idea would be something like an alien invasion happening throughout the wipe. And at the end of it,
Okay.
it all culminates, or whatever that word is, and everything like comes to a head. And either the server has been working together to defeat the aliens, or they have not, and it's really difficult to hold them off at the end. So you have this final extinction event of your planet getting destroyed or taken
That's cool.
over,
Yeah, that's
based on how
actually
the players perform
that's a really cool
throughout the
idea.
wipe. And they could just, they could fight each other and fight over land the whole time, or they could work together and build up an amazing defense. And it all
But they
just,
still lose in the end, right? Like,
well,
because
I
the
would,
wipe has to happen, I assume.
yeah, I guess so. Or
They
they
can
just,
still win,
and
but
there's
they
just no
lose
more
everything.
threat. So
Right.
there's no more
Yeah.
reason to play.
Well,
You
Yeah.
could
well,
even
you'd have to introduce new things. Yeah, I
I
guess
said you
that's
could even the players that do end up, winning or whatever, they could have, something just like a token or something that says they did it, you know what I mean, at the start of the
Yeah.
next wipe.
yeah. You get
That could be cool.
badges. You get little badges on your shoulder,
But
or your
that's
lapel, or something. Yeah,
I've
actually
been,
a really good idea. That's because
yeah, that sounds like
everybody
I
talks
would
about
play that game.
wipes,
Absolutely.
but it's like that's the
cool.
first time I've really heard like adding gameplay or an event to the wipe process. That's
Yeah,
a really
Yeah.
very
I
I
just
keep
interesting.
kind
I
of,
keep that one hidden because someone's going to steal that.
I
Yeah,
don't
and then
know. I
I'll
don't know.
put that in.
I've been toying with it for years, and it's way harder to make. Uh,
Right.
yeah, I used to try to keep these things hidden, but I started talking about them more specifically for the reason that execution is the hard part. Ideas are a dime a dozen.
Right. Right.
That's
So
valid.
if
Yeah,
Actually
anybody can
putting it, yeah.
execute this, then
more
kudos
power
to
to them.
them.
Props.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Your
But
game
yeah,
got made without you having to make it.
I'd be
You
like, heck
saved the
yeah,
headache.
sweet.
Yeah, awesome. Let's play. Yeah. Have you ever had to switch an engine mid project? Like things just weren't working, things weren't coming together. You guys realized this would work better on on this version or this engine.
Not
Um,
totally, but that game I was just talking about, I tried making it on my engine. I tried making it on Unreal. I tried toying with it on Unity. They all got scrapped very quickly because it's just a very complicated thing.
so there's
So it's
definitely visions and projects that just can't come to light too. It sounds like.
not solo or not without a lot of work. Yeah,
Yeah,
because even with that idea, knowing exactly what I want to do, it's still like there's so much to do, from designing worlds to designing systems to designing servers, and then of course putting all that up. And can only imagine the amount of bugs. Yeah, it's a
it's a
monumental
daunting
amount of work.
task.
Yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
the
Yeah.
idea is nothing compared to how much work it would take to actually do it and make it viable.
Do engine updates make things like that more feasible? Like, do they make it to where you are like, hey, I had that idea a while back, but now I could probably do it with, a recent update.
They definitely help on occasion, like Unreal. They come out with new little features to help programmers. Like they do world partitioning. I think it's a pretty popular thing nowadays. They have these sort of things built into their map design now. And partitioning is like basically loading certain parts of the map at a time and not the whole thing. And it's kind of a built-in system that just happens automatically if you design it with it in mind. And it's like absolutely needed for open world games because it's just
Right.
too much stuff to try to load all at
Everything's
once.
getting bigger. Yeah.
So things like that being built into engines or coming along with it help, but it's something that people have been custom designing for years, and eventually, they put it in an engine if it's when they think it's mature enough to go to the end user.
Now, on average, say you're, mid project and you want to switch to, say, you're on Unity 2020 and you want to switch to 2022. Do you know about like on average how hard that is to do? Like, is it a complete overhaul or is it pretty easy to plug in?
It
Well,
really depends.
let's put it to what let's put it to actuality. So Tarkov is moving from what? It is it 20 or is it 19?
2020
Yeah,
to
2020
2022.
to 2022. Is that going to be a monumental task? Because it has taken some time and they've been like oh sorry. A while back they said Unity 21, and then they were like, "Hey, this isn't working. Unity 22 is almost out. We think we should just go." Excuse me. We think we should just go with that route. How
Yeah.
big of an undertaking is that, or is it
Hmm.
pretty simple to knock out?
I think it depends. I think it goes along with that technical debt thing. The more stuff you have, the more features you've built with an older engine. When you move it to a new one, some of that stuff breaks, and it's just like, oh, this whole system we designed does not work anymore when we move to the new engine. So they have to go in and fix all that too. It's often what happens when they go to a new
So
version. Is
essentially, just port the game over and then fix anything that broke in the move.
Yeah, and if it's a really big game and a lot of stuff breaks, it could be a complete nightmare. Usually what teams do is they lock to a version. They say, "Hey, this long-term support version came out. We're going to use this for the next 2-3 years, even if they've released new versions. We're not going to upgrade." So that happens pretty frequently, especially with bigger games. And when they want
Which
to
I
go,
think is what Tarkov did at first for so long, but where it's been 10 years in the making, I think they realize they need to. They said it's not just for us, but for the devs themselves, for things to become easier, updates and whatnot.
oh yeah, I
Uh,
bet,
So
yeah,
the
yeah,
tool set that comes along with Unity 22 versus Unity 20, I'd imagine is pretty substantial.
yeah. They probably I haven't looked specifically at Unity, but yeah, every big update they usually add in quite a few new features and improvements, and they often decommission old stuff, and that's where problems come in because some of that old
right.
stuff is still being used and it just doesn't work anymore.
I know DayZ's had some issues with that where they allow modding, and they just recently released that Frostline DLC, which had some engine changes, and that caused a lot of the maps that people had made to break because one of the
Mm,
objects that they used in the terrain had changed shape, and just because of that, it messed up so many maps. Like, so a lot of people were like having major issues,
I see. Yeah,
and it was
that's
just one
weird.
thing. They said that was all they did was change one little thing.
Huh. Yeah,
But the
it's
devs were nice enough to go back, and they're trying to help them. You know what I mean? Like, find a way to get it back working again.
I see. That's good. Yeah, it can be it's easy to do when your game's small.
Right.
I've done it with small projects, just like little single level, single maybe just a couple little systems. Something
Right.
I was,
Obviously, the less amount of code, then the less
yeah,
problems.
yes. So with stuff like Tarkov, is a huge game at this point. Yeah, an engine
Yeah.
switch is going to be a monumental task. It might be something they need to like stop all updates for a month or two and fully get it ported and then resume building the game,
Um,
kind of thing.
they've been at it for a couple years, and they had a test version of it up on the test server. I didn't jump in and try it. I was going to, but um, I guess early feedback was, there were some rough spots. So, but it's, I think, pretty close. I think it should be coming.
I see.
See,
Now,
the
this
Tarkov
is just a
roadmap.
personal question. I'm wondering, and that's if
Sure.
your game is using, say, DX11, and you're wanting to do some kind of graphical update to DX12 where you could use like ray tracing and just newer features from DX12. Is that even possible, or is it like too much of a switch?
Yeah, it's possible. Um,
Probably just
it's
depends on the game itself.
from my experience with I mostly when I was doing graphics, I was mostly doing OpenGL and Vulkan because they're a little more open
Right.
source. But I did play around with DirectX 9, 10, 11, and 12 a little bit. And basically 12 is like a whole new
Yeah.
setup.
Yeah.
It's not even similar to 11. So it's a pretty big port. If they're writing the graphics from scratch, they got to rewrite everything basically. If they're using an engine, hopefully the engine's done it and they just got to turn on the new features and switch it to DX12. So yeah, it's a whole different code base,
Right.
entirely different code base is the big thing, and like completely different API, which is what a programmer talks to, to
Right.
make it do things. So they just have to fully change their code. But
Because I've seen
if it's just
uh,
the engine that they're updating, it could be easier since the engine's taking care of all the code.
there are a few games that have, you know what I mean, like a DX11 and a DX12 mode. Like
Yep.
PUBG's one of them, I believe. Can't think of the other ones right off, but I know there's been several. I
Yeah.
think Gray Zone is actually like that also. So I was just curious, like, because some games seem to like be able to do it pretty seamlessly, and then others it's like they stay on DX11 and act like there's no way. So I wasn't sure if it was a purpose because of the game itself, or if there's just certain limits in certain engines. And
Yeah, it's hard to say. I guess it's just a matter of turning on a lot of new features. And
right,
from what usually if you design from the start to be,
right, multi,
yeah, and you kind of have some logic in there to say, hey, if it's DX12, do this. If it's DX11, do this. If they're running on Linux and we have to use Vulkan, then do this. If they design it that way from the start, it's fine. But if they
right.
they were only DirectX 11 the whole time and never even considered any other options, yeah, they're gonna have to like go back and check all this stuff that they're like, oh, that doesn't work for a different render.
I'm pretty sure most of the ones that I've seen that have done it have been in Unreal Engine. So I just assumed it was probably easier in Unreal.
Unreal is pretty good about it. It
Yeah,
basically, you
yeah.
just select your renderer and it shows you features relevant to it, and it usually points out problems when you're trying to compile. So
Unreal
it seems
seems
pretty good.
pretty feature rich and user friendly as far as stuff like that. That's knowing nothing about it. That's just what I hear all the time. You know what I mean? I hear how if you're going to start a new game now, just do it in Unreal and don't mess with anything else. But
Well, and then there's me. My understanding of Unreal is I know some of the older games and some current games that I played that were made in Unreal. What I know about Unreal now is they have some really cool looking demos for Unreal 5 of like these ultra 4K, 8K graphics that look, they look real. And
Yeah,
I
their
I
their
guess
built-in shaders are really good.
yeah,
You don't
yeah.
with any other engine, you usually end up writing a bunch of your own custom shaders to make water or fog look right. Unreal just has a lot that they're already good, and you can tweak them to look how you want without having to edit code. So it's nice.
Their lighting and stuff just looks great.
Yeah, yeah. So I think that's why people can pump out these amazing demos is they just don't really have to do the graphics back end,
that's what
which
I
is
was
the
going to
hard
ask
part.
is when do the games get to the point of actually looking like that? Because I know enough to know that's unrealistic for games to be, at least
Well,
currently.
it comes
Not
down to
every player has the systems that we run.
right. 3D modeling is a big part of that. The artist just putting in the right textures that can be applied to the shaders can make it look right. Like you got to have all these. It's a whole nother thing to get into, basically. But if the artist knows really well what to do and how to apply textures and how the engine's going to kind of read it, they can often kind of design towards a certain shader. At least that's what I
Okay.
tend to do. If I'm going to make a 3D model, and I'm not a 3D modeler, so I just make kind of crappy programmer 3D models, but I've researched the basics of it enough to kind of know what I'm doing. You'll make certain ones for reflection. You'll make one for the main color. You'll make other ones for little shadows. So there might be like layers of 3 or 4 textures on your models just to make it look all
Yeah.
correct. And
There's
those
also
are pretty heavy
there's like
sometimes.
different different ways like you can model something to look realistic, or you can model something to just look not like a game, but you know what I mean, like something can have a ton of detail and not look realistic, so it's like you got both ways of doing it.
Yeah, like the game you're playing right now. This
Escape from
Dragon Ball
Tarkov.
Z.
Oh, Dragon Ball. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
yeah, middle.
Like
Yeah.
that shading style right there is called cell shading.
Right,
They're not even using textures; they're using colors,
yeah.
and
Really?
then they're using shading to give them some shadow. But yeah, you can see like on these models, everything's a solid color and it has some shading. It's
Oh,
called
okay. Okay, yeah.
that's a cell shading style. You'll see a lot with cartoon type games, and it
All
can look
right.
pretty
Call of
cool.
Duty,
It does. It
Call of
definitely
Duty
can look cool.
implemented it in their last, not this recent, not Black Ops 6, but the game before that.
Ah,
It was like a update where they had 2 or 3 maps that they cell shaded, and then the characters would be cell shaded when they were in that map. It's kind
It's
of
kind
cell.
of
cool.
cool, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks kind of cool, and cell shading is very cheap to do computation wise. because you don't really have to read in a whole lot of textures. It's just like
Right.
color here, different shade here, and
Yep. That makes
Well,
sense.
even on Tarkov, some of
Some
the things they
layers.
have, I'm pretty impressed by, like, because they have what's called Quixel big scans, which is kind of like their scanning software they use for objects, where they just get it, throw it down, scan it, and then just implement it, and
yeah,
it comes out looking really good. Like, not the
It does.
newest,
Yeah.
highest end, but it captures a lot of the real life
The
aspects of
realistic
items.
details are
Yeah,
what
yeah,
make it
that's
feel
cool.
realistic, anyways.
And that probably exports it in several different textures.
yeah.
Probably, yeah.
And that's kind of what I meant by, it doesn't look. Obviously, it's an older game, so it doesn't look like newer
Your
games. But
trees and your grass and your
right, you
surroundings
can
and stuff don't have the most realistic look to them, for sure. Yeah.
Gotcha.
yeah, any item that you can pick up in the game, though, you can tell it's been 3D scanned like all the way around, and it just looks like you would see in real life.
Yeah, that's really cool. Big time saver. Or it could be, I guess, if you got a lot of things to design. You just have a scanner
Right.
ready.
I mean,
I'm
just
sure.
to put a gun together in Tarkov requires
I was
so
gonna
many
say,
pieces of programming and coding and shading and different
Oh,
the
yeah.
things.
amount,
It's
the amount of
absurd.
stuff they
So
have
And
is something.
they're like modular in that game too, right? You can like swap
Right.
out
yeah, on the fly,
Everything.
yeah.
that would be a nightmare to program, honestly.
Right. And
Every
people
gun
expect
is.
all these patches to get rushed out too, not to get off topic, but it just go ahead, finish what
Yeah.
you're saying.
I was just saying, every gun is 100% like replicated in real life. Like, you can break it down pretty much.
I
just as
have
you could.
several of the parts in game on one of my ARs. It's like I can build the gun I own in this game. My Glock 19X is in the game. Like
That's really cool.
Yeah, it's just interesting to be able to like put all the pieces together and be like, hey, I reckon. Oh, that's the Novisky pig thing. Like that's the flash suppressant I have on my AR. Blah blah blah. Like it's just interesting. It's pretty cool.
Okay. Yeah. Question for
Even
you
the
guys.
bullets.
Oh,
Is that
turn this around on us?
I'm just curious. Like I've
Yeah,
played
go ahead.
Tarkov a little and I found it very frustrating, but I don't
absolutely
Understandable.
I don't have really any gun knowledge, so I have no idea what I'm doing. I see a number on a gun, I'm like, an AK-52. I don't know what that is. It's some kind of AK. Yeah, but is that a big draw for Tarkov? Is people that kind of know guns really well and being able to like realistically replicate things like that?
I would say
That's cool.
it's wasn't what necessarily got me in, but I definitely can see how it would. Like, I do like guns, but I could see
Weapon
how someone
Simulator
who's
was
into
not the
guns would love it.
draw. I am into guns. I do genuinely enjoy it. I like being able to recognize real life parts. You know what I mean? I like the whole idea of it, and it is cool how you can build the gun to the specifications that you want it built to. I like that, but it wasn't the main reason I got into Tarkov. What kept me into Tarkov was the story, the tasking, and the environment. It just drew me in. There was so much to it. Like all these faces are in like all the movies and videos, and I've never had a shooter, a first person shooter, make me feel so immersed into it.
I don't think I ever have either.
The Call of Duty campaigns and stuff are pretty cool. They're pretty good. DayZ's a lot of fun. I get really immersed into that. But Tarkov grabs me in a different way, and the environment, the grittiness of it, and we've talked about it a lot in these other TED Talks, so I'm not going to go too far.
Yeah.
Okay.
But like, there's a lot of different things that draw me into Tarkov, and the guns I don't think we've ever really talked about.
I agree with
They
all
are
that,
cool.
but
It is
I
interesting.
would say it made me appreciate guns more. It made me more into guns. Like, I had a little knowledge on guns, but it was like, now I know so many gun parts. I can look at ammo and tell you what kind of ammo it is now. Like,
Wow.
not just the caliber, but I can tell you what kind of bullet. Like, is that a
Yeah.
AP bullet? Is that a soft point? Is that a hollow point? Like,
That's really interesting. Yeah,
it is
because
because it's all accurate to
it's all
real
real.
life. So like all these
It's all.
this is
that's
FMJ ammo, 545 by 39 FMJ. I can go buy this.
that's
right
part
down
of
the
the
street,
appreciation, I think,
Huh.
for Tarkov for me is the
Might
fact
not
that
be able to
it's
get 9 by
all
18, but
all stuff that's real life. So you know what I mean? Like, you can actually use that knowledge in other areas. Like, and they're all gun
Yeah.
nuts. All the developers, like they go to the shooting range together. That's like part of their requirements to work there, and it just shows that they know what they're talking about when it comes to that stuff. And I appreciate that.
Yeah, I can see it. So bringing it back to cheaters, why do you think people cheat so much in this game? It's a really cool game. It's basically like probably one of the most realistic military shooters out there.
Yeah,
it's high on the list for sure. Yeah,
And there's not like you don't win anything by extracting and getting loot. You're just getting digital currency, right? What's the big incentive to cheat in Tarkov? I don't understand.
So there's a few different reasons. One is you are bad at the game,
Okay, sure. And you just want to
right?
look cool.
You get you die a bunch, you get your ass kicked over and over and over, which everybody starts bad. We're all
Well,
shitters in the beginning,
Sure, yeah.
it's
you know.
also such a high
Competitive
it's such a hard game to master. So if
it
you can
is.
just get an advantage, people are going to do that. And it's a painful game to just play normal. If you're going to play normal, you're going to go through some rough patches.
Oh yeah, for sure. That was
And I
my
think
problem. I had all
yeah.
these knowledge gaps. I didn't know what to do. I remember
Right.
I died from a bleed and I was so upset. I was like, why is this little bleed draining all my health? I don't can't I just cover it with my hand and put pressure on it?
Right.
I'm dying.
I'm
And that's
dying
part
here.
of the thing. Like I didn't know anything either. Like I was getting my ass kicked when I first started. I'd watched some people play it, but I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what to use to heal. I didn't know what to use for surgery. I had no
Yep.
idea, about extracts. But I
Armor,
think that's
helmets,
part of
ammo,
the
magazines,
yeah,
reloading your magazines, actually packing your magazines, bringing
yeah,
extra
flea
ammo. What?
market, the
Yeah.
hideout, the
There's
like.
quests. What?
It makes me appreciate it more though, since I've actually took the time to learn it, and I think cheaters don't want to put that time and effort in. So you know what I mean? Like it's just like with any other game. It's a competitive advantage, but with this game, a competitive advantage is much more than like in a COD or a
Yeah.
Battlefield. You know what I
Okay.
mean?
But
Like
are there tournaments for this game? Do
Yes.
people
yeah,
do that
yeah,
sort of thing? Okay.
yep. There's
Okay.
tournaments. There's even a PvP focused version called Tarkov Arena, but it's a whole nother game mode. It's just like a
Arena.
6v6.
Okay.
Um, but then there's also the money aspect. There's a lot of money into cheating.
Real
You
money
can carry
transactions have
people.
always been a big issue
Yeah,
too.
yeah. RMT is become
Oh, I
the only
see.
reason I
Yeah.
know what RMT is because of Tarkov.
Yeah.
People will pay people to take them in and just kill the whole lobby and give them all the loot.
That's real
And
market
yeah,
trading or
Real money
real money
transactions.
transfers. Yeah.
Real
okay,
market
real money
transactions.
transfers.
Yeah.
Okay.
So one, okay, yeah. So back to the many reasons of Tarkov cheaters. One, you're bad at the game. Two, it's a highly competitive game. People want to be the best, right? There's a leaderboard, there's tournaments, there's all kinds of reasons and things and stuff.
Sure.
Three, I think I'm on three. Yeah, three. Real money transactions. In loot game or in loot I or in game loot turns into selling those items on the flea market, and then it was this whole thing. Like the person would go in raid, they'd get the items, they'd sell the items to the account through a website, and then I think it was they would get your account information, log into your account, sell those items to you like on very specific barter trades real quick, like to get you the items in your account. And then I think they did the same thing for like item level or for leveling and just getting money and guns and this and that and cases, and like I've looked at the websites before and they offer an extensive amount of things you can get. So there's
Mhm.
like this whole market for everything that you could want done in the game of Tarkov, even your tasks being completed for you.
Yeah, even just whole accounts. Like they'll
Yeah,
just sell you a whole account.
an
Okay.
entire level 60 high stats, you look like a Chad, you got all the items, you got all the cases, like there's a market for people just wanting to have the things that they don't get in the game, which boils back to item one, you're bad at the game.
Gotcha.
And
And
the
then
difficulty.
there's griefing.
Yeah,
Okay.
people just want to
People,
be
their
dicks.
favorite, or not even their favorite streamer, the big streamer will say, landmarks out here crushing people, doing this. You got all these different Shroud and like all these other people. It's like who these people that's died to them, or maybe they're just tired of seeing them win all the time, or whatever it is. They'll like get into
I
their
see.
games through whatever means of pinging their IP, I assume, something along those lines to
Or
figure
just
out what
watching
server
their
they're
stream or
in. Yeah,
something.
stream sniping, all these other
Yeah.
things. So there's that incentive, and how are they going to kill them because they're bad at the game or they're not as good as them?
Right.
Well, we're gonna cheat, So
Yeah.
there's that option. But yeah, and then there's the difficulty of the game, like Adam was about to say. It is extremely
Yeah,
difficult. You do not
I think
start Tarkov with no help on your own and survive for probably quite a while. Like it's
I think
rough.
the difficulty of the game is a multiplier for the cheating because
Yeah.
it makes more people, number one, want to cheat to get better. Number two, it incentivizes the RMTing because the reason people want to buy accounts or buy stuff is because it's hard to get stuff. So it's like the difficulty is the reason why I believe there's so much issue with it. And I think that as long as there's people to look up to, like, oh, my favorite streamer plays, as long as there's popularity, it's never going to end. You know what I mean? Like, people are going to
Yeah.
keep doing it. I think it's
So
impossible to stop.
so I guess to follow up, they've got Battle Eye. Is it catching any of these people?
No,
Or
Battle Eye is one of the worst anti-cheats used currently. All the major games that use Battle Eye are also all the major games at the top of the biggest cheating issue list.
so
It's
Battle Eye
kind of
is
absurd.
not
Destiny
kernel level,
2,
right?
no,
Battle Eye is not current. No, it's not. Like, they
and it's
did
getting dumped
ban,
on.
what was it, 50,000 cheaters over the last few months?
28,000 and then 30-some thousand before that.
Yeah, it was something like
They
that.
have
Okay.
been doing pretty big ban waves, which is
So I
good.
mean,
That's
they
great.
definitely do catch people,
And they are
but
trying, and they have
Okay.
been stated saying like, "Hey, we found this back door we can close up." I'm pretty sure I might have to redact that from the video, but
there's
I'm
kind of
fairly
a
certain there was
two.
a hint at like, "Hey, we think we've solved some of the problem."
So they're
Not
trying, but they
they
can't.
are
Yeah,
trying,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. They're 100% trying.
What
There's a
can't they catch? What are the
well,
things that they just can't seem to get?
Well, it seems like they catch, and when something gets popular,
it's
they
caught and
eventually
dealt
catch it.
with,
Yeah, and then
but
something
it's
else
that cat
pops
and
up.
mouse, yeah.
Oh,
Nikita
okay.
even says
And they're on the
it's just a
backside of it,
constant.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
constant cat and mouse.
There's a conspiracy that BSG is in cahoots somehow with the cheat sellers for account sell purposes. So they do these mass ban waves to get rid of a bunch of accounts, and then they sell a bunch of accounts back. Like it's like the cheaters and BSG working together to sell and buy accounts. That's how BSG keeps making their money. That's one of the
Is there any
conspiracies out right
actual
now.
evidence of
No,
that?
no.
Oh,
No,
okay.
it's just the current conspiracy. So it's like
Okay.
there's this obvious, but it just kind of shows that there's
It's
always
always
been this
been,
cat and mouse
yeah,
game of
it's
BSG
always
trying to
been
catch up,
people's.
them getting a little bit further ahead, BSG trying to catch up.
Yeah,
And I
that
think
sounds
that's
about
any studio.
normal. That's
Yeah.
about normal for these anti-cheats. Yeah, and if they're
Well,
not kernel level, they're not
So
totally scanning your computer. So it's probably just your actions in game
And
that they're
Tarkov
You
has
think
talked about that. They've talked about implementing kernel level. Nikita asked it a while back, I think, on Twitter, and people overwhelmingly said no. You know
I'd
what I mean? Like,
imagine so.
everyone's like, nope, I don't want Russians having access to my computer,
Right.
blah, blah.
Yeah.
So it's like they were thinking about it, but he
Well,
said they could also, you know what I mean? Like, basically, they are trying to do their own thing. They use Battle Eye, but they also like do in-house reviews, and like you can send them like you have in-game reporting of if you see someone that you think is suspicious, which all that's fairly new. Like, they just put that into the game like maybe a year or two ago. So it's like they're trying to fight it, and I don't believe that that they're purposefully letting their game get infested. Like,
right.
I just don't see any evidence.
No, I wouldn't think they would.
No.
Sounds, just the way they focus so much on the details. They're not just going
Right.
to let cheaters in and ruin their game. No,
Exactly.
I think that's a busted.
They'll make
yeah, that's
more
it's
money
Yeah.
a
off
ridiculous
just having a
idea, but
healthy
that's
player
just
base than they are like
Right.
cheaters rebuying accounts.
right all day long.
And they've been working on it for 10 years. They're not suddenly going to
exactly.
start scamming.
Project. There's so
Yeah.
many. They've made a movie around it. They've got a series around it. Like they've put so much effort into the game alone. They're constantly like they are way more involved than most other studios.
They
Seems so, yeah.
do
we
ban
really
people a
have
lot,
talked
though.
about this stuff a lot. We really have.
Is it still a problem? When you
it is, yeah.
play for like a day or a stream, do you notice a cheater or
Not
two?
as bad
That's
as
the
it
thing.
was.
Well,
In my
we
eyes.
play on PvE, but it doesn't seem from what I watch stream wise and for everything else on PvP, and from the time I have put into PvP this wipe, it didn't seem as bad. Like there wasn't as much obvious blatant cheating. There might still be some pretty bad
I
stuff out there, but I don't think it seemed as rough.
I played, I think, up to level 28 on PvP, and I ran into one cheater, and that was the cheater that I ended up killing in labs. That was the only one that I knew was for sure a cheater, because he basically told me he was a cheater. He's like, "Hey, I see you. I'm going to come get you."
Yeah.
But
Do you
like,
see
so
a problem with the custom reporting? And you guys, I don't know if you mess with that a whole lot, but like if someone's just really good, don't they just get spam reported even if they're
That's the
not
other.
cheating?
That's where the manual review comes in, and it's
Yeah, I
like
was gonna say
I
they
how
see.
long until they reach the footage that I sent them, and how long until this happens, and
there is a
Gotcha.
problem with that because streamers have the connects. Like if they get reported, they can get it fixed within a couple hours.
yeah.
Other people have had to wait weeks. You know what I mean? So that
Huh.
is a issue. And
Yeah.
BattleEye is part of that too because BattleEye's false banned a bunch of accounts.
That's a
Yeah.
really
Um,
frustrating experience from a
well,
player to get
So
falsely banned
that brings
I
too.
that actually. There's a new thing happening with
that's what I was
cheats
about to
in
say.
Tarkov.
I was about to say the exact
People
same thing.
are the cheaters are getting
They're gaining
normal regular players' accounts
yeah,
banned permanently.
they were gaining access to the BattleEye ban system somehow and being
Yeah.
able to ban people through BattleEye that weren't cheating.
Do
The
you
hackers
think
themselves.
someone
Wow.
in BattleEye is leaking the code and stuff for these things, or do you think it's just too easy to backdoor their systems?
Well, if it's running on their computer, someone's going to be able to scan it and see what it's doing and figure it out eventually because
Right.
it's running as,
There's
in
no
theory,
safe,
machine
reliable way to
code.
lock down things within.
Everything's a
Yeah.
program in the end.
Yeah, if they can look at what BattleEye is doing, they can scan the memory and they can
Adjust the code as
decompile it,
needed.
is what they
Right.
tend to call it, or they can just take the application itself and decompile it. And when you do that, and it's pretty reliable these days actually to decompile, you can basically see the program in its natural code state before it's even machine code. I didn't even talk about that earlier, but that's another thing, is decompiling these apps enables cheaters too, because they can just basically look at everything going on in the game and then write stuff based on that and know what to modify. So I don't decompiling is another whole thing that might be worth a little research, but yeah, if you got the app or on your computer, there's people in across the world decompiling it and looking at it all the time and sharing it on forums and things like that.
Right.
So
Now,
people are going to understand how these programs work, and there's really no way around that, unfortunately.
there was a device that people were using in their PCs and they were using it to hack. I can't remember what it's called. I think it started with
DMA,
a D. Yeah,
DMA
yeah,
device.
yeah. And basically it just goes in a PCIe slot and
Say
somehow it gives you
Yeah,
DMA.
that's
it's
yeah,
like is that what it is? DMA?
DMA. Yeah,
DMA stands for direct memory access.
yeah. That's what it is.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a PCIe device that gives you
Yeah,
direct memory access and
Oh, amazing.
basically yeah.
Yeah,
You
that's going
plug
to
it
be
in and
that's going to
DMA
make
simple
it
cards. You
so
setup.
can buy
easy.
them for $176 through Walmart.com.
Yeah, and it's perfectly
Yeah,
legal because it's just your
It's just
RAM. There's
right.
right.
nothing
Yeah.
illegal about
What's
scanning
the
your own RAM.
problem? Hey, it's
Yeah.
mine. Yeah.
Yeah. So aside from making a black box system, and there's unfortunately no perfect way to combat these cheats. Me personally, I think it needs to go in a reputation system of like, once you're a known cheater, your IP's banned. Screw you. Too bad.
Right.
But
Well, then they bring up the whole, oh well, I can spoof my IP. It's like,
yes.
okay, so how do we get around that? Like, what do we? And
Well,
it just boils down to it's a cat and mouse
yeah.
game. We fix
I was
one,
gonna
we
say
find another. Fix
it's
one,
like
find another.
deterrent versus fixing it. It's like whatever you can
Yeah.
do to deter it, even if they can find a way to spoof their, it's like some of them aren't going to. So the more, deterrent you can provide, I think is good.
Yeah.
Whether
I
it's,
agree.
beatable in the end or not.
Because yeah, banning IP, ultimately it doesn't work if the person doesn't want it to work. But that's going
Right.
to knock out maybe 60% of the cheaters.
Exactly. Because half of those people are just cheating because, they wanted to try it and they're not going to go all out on trying to, get their
Yeah.
account back or,
And when they get a message saying their IP was banned and you've been
right.
reported to the officials, they're going to be like, okay, I'm done.
My mom and dad's
Uh,
gonna find out.
Yeah,
What I do?
yeah.
I think there should be, I don't know how you're ever, or anyone's ever going to implement this, but I think it should be like a finable offense to cheat in these games
Is
personally.
there a
Because
way
Honestly,
to actually track down the cheat sellers?
yeah, they do. They do.
Because
Like
I can just type in Tarkov cheats, and I just did a second ago, and it pulls up, a long list of cheat sellers,
a lot of them
you know,
go into countries that they can't be arrested for. But
extradited or arrested. Yeah.
you've
yeah,
seen recently a lot of big news stories about whole buildings that are full of nothing but cheat devs, like being raided and arrested, and you know what I mean. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
Call of Duty Activision sued them.
Oh,
What? Oh,
I think we're good. There was a
Activision
backfeed.
Yeah, Activision sued I can't remember who it was. It was one of the cheat makers, and actually took them to court and won, and they had to
That's
pay
awesome.
Activision like $10 million. Yeah,
Oh,
like,
cool.
and then they end up shutting down right after. So, and that was
Yeah.
a well-known Warzone, cheat developer.
Yeah, I think making them accountable's about all you can do.
Well,
Yeah,
like you
there's
said, with the like actually breaking the law and stuff, like because there's a lot of money and time and stuff involved in that. Any other property of someone's, if you were messing with it, you would get in trouble. Like you would get in like criminal charges. So I don't see a problem with people being,
criminally charged for it.
yeah,
Yeah,
like I just don't
absolutely.
see a problem with it.
I
I don't
agree.
either, but is
Yeah,
that how the law's written?
absolutely not.
Because I
I
don't
mean,
think the
not at the
law
moment.
It's been
thinks
Yeah.
about
meticulously written, and
they're
they
just going
haven't
to
gotten
say
this far yet.
it's a video game. We're
Yeah,
not going to make laws around your video.
Well,
Yeah.
we are getting
if you
closer
notice,
to it, though. We really are.
Activision already has. Activision,
Yeah,
if you load up any Activision game, you will see in the
yeah.
fine print now that any unauthorized use or tampering with this software, like they make it clear, you do not own this software. This is ours. If you mess with it, you will be prosecuted under criminal prosecution or something like that. I don't know
I
exactly
see.
what it says, but yeah, they're kind of, because they got such a bad reputation with Warzone. I think they're kind of taking the incentive to try to clean their image up, so they're doing all they can do.
I see. Yeah, that's interesting.
But I think they should get the death penalty. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, murder
That's
them
how
all. Put them
that's
in
how it
a.
feels when they ruin like 3 hours of your
Exactly.
work, right?
Well, okay, so yeah, that's the other thing people don't think with a lot of it. It's like you have these entire studios that have put their heart and souls into these projects, especially one like Tarkov, or something that started small and is built to something this big. Like you got 10 years of time almost into this thing, and why would realistically anyone want it to be ruined?
Yeah, you
When you
don't.
have such a better goal in mind, and when you can have such a great game in front of you. I still really want to do an interview with a cheater at some point, because I'd like to just know what their mindset is. Like, not the grief cheater. Oh, I was angry. I hate seeing that guy. Like, whatever. I want to know, like, the habitual cheater that cheats in every game and they
People's
do
been
it
doing
for
it for
whatever
years.
reason. Yeah, like, I want to know what they're like. What makes you want to cheat in a game? Like, what makes you not want to be like every other person in the world, and it's either this game's not for me, this game is for me. Okay, now I have to learn the game, or now I have to
Mm.
move on to another game.
Yeah, it's like, how do they find enjoyment
Yeah,
when they're
Yeah,
never
that'd
even
be
played the game?
a curious case study, and
Yeah.
I bet it has something to do with a psychological thing,
Oh yeah,
I would
100%.
imagine. Yeah,
like
100%.
they never could win, or their parent. I don't know, just some weird thing that you wouldn't expect. Is
Some
probably
kind of
all
trauma
behind
or
it.
something
it
that
is
Yeah,
though. It always is. There's always some like weird underlying issue that just seems so far disconnected from what they're doing.
from a
Um,
yeah.
developer's mind, like how would you feel, say one of your projects, you released it, and you have all these people trying to
30,000 active players daily. Everybody's loving it. It jumps up.
yeah,
It
Yeah.
goes crazy, and then where's your mind at? One, when people start cheating in it and continually cheating in it, and it gets worse. And then where's your mind at when these accusations like start coming around and like all this stuff? And
yeah, the player base starts being like, oh well, you don't even want to take care of them, you just don't even care, you know what I mean? Like how do you think you personally or other developers would feel in that situation?
Yeah, it sounds, to think about it is almost aggravating. Wow. I never thought about that before.
Yeah,
But
so
yeah,
frustration for sure, probably a
yeah,
bit
but
depressing, a bit of betrayal.
yeah, yeah, defeat. Like
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think I guess if I had money or wanted to put resources in it, I would try to sue whoever's making it. I guess. I I probably, I don't know, to start messing with anti-cheat, I feel like is almost the death of a game, unfortunately.
right.
Just because it's like at that point where no one can trust it anymore,
Yeah.
And I don't know I think I would just publicly give the middle finger to the cheaters and say, "What do you want me to do about it? I just made the game.
Right,
I'm
yeah.
not a
You're not
fucking
you're
uh,
not BattleEye. You're not the company that controls the anti-cheat.
yeah." And even if I wanted to be, I know that it's a futile task,
Are
and it's like if you want to cheat, you're going to cheat. That's on you.
If you're using the Unity engine, are you stuck with BattleEye, or can you use any anti-cheat that you want? Like, could they go
No,
to a
they can
kernel
switch it
level?
up. Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
you
they
can
can
you can
they can
use whatever
switch
you
it up.
want.
Okay.
They're typically third party. They're usually not made by the same developer, but really only the person that develops this game would be like the most important variables to watch for if they're odd, someone's probably cheating.
And they supposedly have an in-house anti-cheat that they are also. They don't talk
Developing.
about it. Nikita says because he doesn't want to give any information on it, but he says they are, not only using it but building it up more and more as time
Oh, good for
goes.
them. Yeah, and it's probably just most of those. They're basically a big file scanner. You're scanning
Right.
Right.
some state, and the anti-cheat, based on whatever it's looking for, will tell you things. So that's usually all they are, from like a technical level. And maybe don't tell people that because it's too simple, but that's what it is.
I mean,
That's what Ryan is
anybody
too.
that's
He's a
willing to look into it and like really will be interested in it has already probably
True.
dabbled.
True.
So what is it if it's as simple as just scanning their files and everything else? Why is it that so many are able to go for so long? I think we already touched on that actually. It breaks down to the whole kernel level or
Well,
not essentially,
something
right?
like that, yeah. And I think it's just like it running these things can take a lot of processing power. If it needs to scan your whole drive, your drive is going to do a read of your entire drive. And if you're on an old non SSD, that takes forever.
It does. It does indeed.
But
You
if you're
also
on an
got to think
SSD, it's
about.
pretty fast though.
You also got to think about the amount of players. It's just like if you got a game that's got 2,000 players, that's one thing. But when you are reaching up into the 50, 70, 100,000 players, on a normal day, it's probably very hard to keep track of any little get any little sign that someone might be cheating because you're already focused on all the other blatant cheaters. It's probably impossible to have that many people to have the time to just always be on top of it
Yeah. Yeah, it
without a
really is.
bunch of people. You'd have to assign a bunch of people to something like that. Which I
Yeah.
think is where BattleEye comes in. That's why they outsource it to the third party anti-cheats.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
guess I like reputation and ranks personally. I think a lot of games do that well. Like
Yeah.
Warcraft 3 is still going on kind of a rank system. And I'm sure they have some kind of anti-cheat, but no one seems to cheat in that game at high
True.
ranks or
And it
where a
has
lot
a
of
pretty
people play.
competitive stance.
Yeah, because once you're up there, you're kind of like well known. And if you're a cheater, then you're
You're
not,
pushed down. Yeah, you're just not.
and I guess you could reclimb with a new account, but to have a well-known name is kind of big, I think. Because it's always, I'm battling this guy. He's a known good player. Is going to be a great match. Or there's going to be, I'm battling an unknown. He's a high rank, but he's unknown. So who knows if he's,
Right.
there's always
Right.
that expectation that this guy is a potential cheater because he has 0 rep. Uh, yeah, it goes back to just like a human community system, in my opinion, to actually truly be fixed. Is people just all got to be on board of, yeah, games suck when you cheat. Let's not.
Right. Let's get rid of that.
Yeah.
Let's not do it.
That's always been my experience, even as a kid. Like I remember hooking up the Game Genie and playing
Oh yeah, I do too.
Contra because that game was like
Right.
impossible, and then beating it, and then I never played the game again in my
Didn't
entire
feel
life.
good. It didn't
Yeah,
feel good.
and I was like, this game was really hard, and it was kind of cool to see everything, but I have no motivation to play anymore. And I think it does that too. The game just kills motivation to play as the cheater. So that's personally why I don't cheat. Is like it just feels bad. It's not even fun.
Right.
Yeah, I have no desire to cheat. Like I just
Yeah.
don't. It's hard for me to put myself in the mind of a cheater because I can't relate. Like I don't get it. Like I get
Yeah,
the reasons people do it, but I personally have never felt
same.
the want.
Yeah,
Right.
I could literally only do it as an experiment. I think, like to say, hey, I'm going to record a video and I'm going to use this cheat just to see what happens
Right.
because I've,
Right.
and blatantly being a test of that I can see now.
Right.
That's the
Well,
only
like
way I could justify even
running
trying
it.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um. Well, and from your standpoint too, you get to you get more information than the average Joe who's just like I'm cheating to cheat. It's like
sure.
you are gaining information out of the process too,
Yeah,
just
I
seeing
I
how it
do a
all
lot of
works and
weird
comes
stuff
together and
for
goes.
research.
Right. Yeah. I do too. Trust me. I do too.
So it's interesting that just, being a science-minded person gets you into a lot of this dirty stuff. But that's not the problem though. It's like it needs to be understood one way or another. The
Right.
problem is the people who abuse it and habitually do it. If
Yeah.
you can find someone, that would be interesting.
I would, yeah, just to have a conversation with them, just to see.
I
The
wonder
sad
if
reality is it's just we're just stuck with it.
are
Yeah,
you.
absolutely.
I wonder if it's even possible to find someone like
Well,
maybe anonymous, but
there's always like the guy on one of our comments like, "Oh, I'm an active cheater. I've used whatever DMA for so long. I'm to just get on to blatantly cheat, blah blah blah." And it's like, "Oh, cool. You want to have a conversation about it? If you swear you'll never play this bullshit game again." And then we do another TED talk, and he's like, "You guys single-handedly made me want to come back and cheat on this game." And I just said, "Game so bad it's not even fun to cheat at." And then I said, "This you?"
Yeah, why don't
But
you just
yeah,
try
it was
actually
just like,
playing the game?
yeah, just if it's not fun to cheat at, try just playing and see how you do.
Tarkov has a
those
surprisingly high amount
But
of
that's
people who are willing to talk about their cheating.
right. But
huh.
at
I've
the same
noticed that.
time, they're commenters on a YouTube video, and it's like, like I told him, it's getting harder and harder to take you seriously. It's like if you
Huh.
were to say, "Hey, I've been blatantly cheating. I'm an obvious cheater," like blah blah blah. Do you want to have a conversation about it? Yeah, we can talk about it. Blah blah. That's one thing. But to just saying you're blatantly cheating just to say you're blatantly cheating and act one way or another is it's hard to be like, is this person actually cheating? And if I bring them on, are they just going to be an arrogant ass and just say stupid shit, or do they actually know what they're
Right.
talking about? And I want to get like a confirmed actual cheater
Hmm.
that's smart, intelligent enough to just hold a conversation.
I see how
And you
that
have
could be hard to weed out. Yeah.
It is,
well,
yeah,
you have the two types also. You have the two types of cheaters because there's the people that are doing it for the money aspect because that's a big business. From what
absolutely,
Nikita has
carries and
said,
shit, yeah,
yeah, there's a bunch of money that they make. You know what I mean? Because they have tried tracking them down. They've got a hold of the website's money that flows through it and stuff, trying to actually get a hold of the people.
yeah.
And it's millions and millions of dollars that people are making off the game by cheating. So it's like you have them, and then you have just your players that just cheat for nothing. And it's like I don't think you'll really ever get to talk to the ones that are doing it for the money unless they have a reason, unless you could pay them to actually talk to you. Otherwise, I doubt they'll ever say anything. But
If
finding the
one of you watch
players
this
that just
video, full discretion, you'll be, we can censor you out in every way. We just wanted to talk.
I'll give you like $2.
Two
And a quarter.
bucks. Yeah, I can I guess for maybe viewer purpose, I don't know if you guys are actually gonna put this kind of thing out, but like I know EarLegAthlete in real life, not through internet. I
Right.
don't really develop. I rarely meet with people that I meet on the internet.
Yeah.
Naturally, it's not a thing I do.
Yeah, we met each other before the internet.
Yeah, so we know each other from playing Magic the Gathering, mutual friends. We
Yep.
know everyone's super chill, super cool, and we have that kind of real life thing going on.
A Dizzle is also my buddy
I'm
Adam
I was gonna say
from.
I'm sorry you had to meet him in real life. But,
Yeah,
No, I
he.
don't mean anything. Yeah, it's different when. Yeah,
But yeah, so yeah, uh, but yeah, I know A Dizzle in real life
yeah,
too.
we
Like
okay,
we
cool,
grew
cool.
up together through
yeah.
school and stuff.
So, but that just kind of adds on to the point that like when you're getting someone in the comments and trying to have them on, you really are it's like playing Russian roulette.
It is. It is. It
It's
is.
not ideal for a real conversation because they could
Right.
literally say anything with no
Well,
No
credibility.
context, no credibility.
especially
Yeah.
someone who's begging to talk. You know what I mean?
Right.
Right.
Like Ryan said earlier, if that's a cheater, more than likely they're not even going to want to talk anyway, so they're not going to be advertising it.
Yeah, the people that cheat at the game to genuinely gain profit or just be well liked in the community or whatever their excuse may be, but the long term cheaters that have been doing it for a while, they keep
Sure.
when one thing gets caught, they switch it out to the next one. Those kind of people.
Yeah, you got to watch out for them grifters.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
Get you.
there's
fucking grifters.
a bunch of cheaters, like they start cheating to become Twitch streamers, and they actually start to get an audience, and they get a little recognition, and then once people start paying attention, they realize, oh hey, this dude's
How? Yeah,
cheating. So there's been like probably 10 that I can think of just right off the top of my head. 10
Wow.
people that have gotten decent and started to get some traction, and then come to find out they were cheaters.
they were
And
cheaters. Yeah,
Wow.
it's like, so people do that a lot, just trying to start a career.
That's
yeah. Because
crazy.
I mean, you get big on Twitch.
Yeah.
You start doing this other stuff. You're making money. People are donating. You've got sponsors and this
So
and that, and you're making a livelihood off of it.
So
And
there
a lot
must
of the
be okay. We hear about the failed stories where they get caught, but are there success
oh
stories? Are
yeah,
there well
Yeah,
known
absolutely.
ones
absolutely. Yeah.
that are
Because a
still
lot
well
of
known?
people
There's some
just run
questionable ones for
walls,
sure.
they just run wall hacks, so it's not obvious, you know
It's
what I
on a
mean?
separate
And
monitor. There, you know,
yeah,
there's
Oh
and
yeah,
it's like basically they can just do that their whole career, you know what I mean? And no one's really ever gonna know. Like people will suspect it. Like
always
one of
suspicion
Tarkov's
around it.
biggest
Yeah.
streamers has been suspected of cheating forever. Um, and I believe he used to, just because I've seen enough to where he's
There were
had
some
some
pretty
really sus stuff.
questionable things. Yeah.
He's been
hmm
banned 3 times, but that could be
Right.
for mass reporting, but it's just weird. He's been banned 3 times. He has some really suspicious stuff. Nowadays, I don't think he cheats because, I think he's always been good enough at the game where he didn't have to. But I think starting off, you know what I mean? Like that's a success story because I'm pretty sure he was cheating at the beginning. And now
huh?
he's the biggest streamer pretty much for Tarkov.
Pure speculation, but
Yeah,
yeah,
100% speculation. That's just my opinion.
Just
uh-huh.
based off video footage and things that we've seen.
Yeah.
That's
I mean, it's kind of
interesting.
the
And off the
community's
ban reports
speculation.
and
It's well
yeah.
known.
What about
Yeah.
Pestily? Is Pestily cheating?
No, 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 no.
Dude, when he did that video where I don't know, he had like a fully automatic Glock of some sort and just really
Yeah,
Off
tanky and just
ATC.
killed
Yeah.
everyone in the lobby.
yeah,
Oh, that was so entertaining.
yeah. The
Stuff is fun.
18C.
Yeah.
Someone was
Thanks,
doing that
Evil.
this way. Who was doing
Uh,
that? Oh, it was Deadly Slav. He was running the 18C and just dominating with it.
it just looks fun. It's probably got weaknesses like snipers kill you or something.
Oh
Well,
yeah.
yeah, you're limited on range, and
Yeah,
Yeah.
your range
you
is
can
big.
burn through ammo real quick, and
And you can't get good ammo for it at the start. Like you have to wait till.
yeah, later in the wipe.
Right on.
But yeah, is there any other questions anybody wants to ask or anything for the video purposes
I mean, I think I'm pretty good on everything.
for an hour and a half?
Yeah, it was pretty
Granted,
good.
some of it's gonna get cut and stuff. We might have
Right,
to
right,
make
right.
2 parts, but
Yeah, I feel like we got a little more rambly near the end, but that's pretty natural for a long
Yeah,
day, I
which
guess.
yeah,
I almost feel like I mean, like that's good because it gives. I think it just gives an easier way for it to be cut up. You can separate that stuff
yeah,
to something else.
yeah, absolutely.
It's nice meeting you, Dizzle,
Yeah.
and thanks for having me on. That's I guess all I wanted to say. It's been cool. I've learned some things too from you guys.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I
Thank you for
appreciate
coming
the
on.
conversation. Nice to meet you too, Matt, and hopefully we can do this again sometime.
Yeah.